Today, we are diving into a court case from India that really hinges on one single, powerful question. Can a secret about your health actually be enough to completely erase your marriage? It's a story that kind of forces us to ask how the law should handle secrets, love, and, well, the evolution of medicine.
This isn't just some old legal document. It's basically a time capsule. This one case from 30 years ago opens up a story that shows just how dramatically our understanding of medicine, our social values, and even the very laws that govern us can be transformed over time. So our story doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts with a wedding. Back in 1988, in the city of Pune, India, a woman named Chandrakala married a man named Subhash. But yeah, this was no fairy tale. The marriage unraveled almost as quickly as it began. We're talking weeks. A shocking discovery just shattered their new life, leading to a super swift separation, and then a pretty dramatic petition to have the entire marriage legally erased.
So what was the reason? Well, it was a medical diagnosis. The husband, Subhash, found out that his new wife, Chandrakala, was suffering from leprosy. His claim was that this was a secret she and her family had deliberately kept from him before the wedding, and he argued it was a deception so profound that the marriage itself was just completely invalid. And this is where the whole thing really comes to a head. It all hinges on one critical question. Was hiding a medical condition the same thing as committing fraud? Could this one secret really be powerful enough to legally undo a marriage? So the court was faced with two just totally different realities. On one side, the husband's argument was pretty simple. He was defrauded, and he never would have consented if he'd known the truth. But on the other side, the wife presented a much more complex picture. She claimed they knew each other well, that it wasn't even leprosy at all, and that his family was really just driven by superstition. Now, you have to understand, the law here is incredibly specific. Fraud in a marriage isn't about some little white lie, like pretending you like a certain movie. No, it has to be about a material fact, a piece of information so fundamental, so important, that knowing it would have changed the decision to get married in the first place. The entire case rested on whether the husband could prove his wife's condition met this really, really high standard. So, after years of legal battles, the case works its way all the way up to the Bombay High Court, which delivered its final verdict in 1994. And that decision? It was split into two very distinct parts. First, on the main issue of the marriage itself, the court sided with the husband. It found that, yes, the wife did in fact have leprosy before the wedding, and that hiding this material fact was fraud under the law at the time. So the marriage was officially annulled, basically treated as if it had never even happened. But wait, that wasn't the end of it. The judges also looked at the wife's situation. I mean, with the marriage gone, she was left in a really vulnerable spot. So the court turned its attention to her financial support, what's known as maintenance. The lower court had awarded the wife just 200 rupees per month. But the High Court, after looking at the husband's tailoring business, declared that amount was, and I quote, too inadequate. So in a pretty significant move, they more than doubled the payment to 500 rupees per month. I mean, think about that for a second. The court, in the same breath, erases the marriage and then reinforces the husband's financial obligation with a massive 150% increase in support. It was this really remarkable balancing act of justice. But here's where the story takes its most dramatic turn. If this exact same case landed in a courtroom today, the verdict would be completely different. And why? Because the law itself has been rewritten. The shift here is just stunning. It's night and day. Back in 1994, leprosy was explicitly listed in the law as grounds for divorce. Today, that part of the law has been completely erased. The law has finally caught up with medical science. And this legal reform in 2019, it wasn't just arbitrary. It was driven by decades of medical progress that made leprosy completely curable. It was also pushed by a global human rights movement, following a UN resolution to end the stigma and discrimination faced by people affected by the disease. The law was changed to reflect science and compassion, not these really outdated fears. So this old case leaves us with a very modern problem. With the old law gone, how would a court today handle a secret about a medical condition that's revealed right after a wedding?
Right, so while you can no longer divorce someone just for having leprosy, the general rule against getting married through fraudulent concealment, that's still very much on the books. The key difference now is the definition of a material fact. Is a completely curable disease still material? That's the question.
A court today would have to face this exact question. It would have to weigh the act of hiding a condition against the modern medical reality that the condition is treatable and poses no long-term risk. The legal ground has totally shifted from being about the disease itself to being about the act of deception.
And that leaves us with a really provocative final question that goes way beyond this single case. In an age of medical privacy and incredible medical progress, where exactly is the line between a private matter and a material deception in a relationship? It's a question the law, and really all of us, are still grappling with.